Hey there, you're listening to Not Another TV Podcast. This is episode 42, the week of April 26, 2024. My name's Drew Koenig. With me, as always, my co-host, Matt Sassy. Matt, how we doing?
We are good. Looking forward to the next vacation. That just tells you how much I love my job right now. And there's nothing majorly wrong with my job. I just am in a headspace of I don't want to work for the money I have to earn to survive.
Yeah.
I wish they would just hand it to me. Just be like, here you go, you existed. Here is your monthly stipend.
Whereas I think I'm at the point where I just don't want the job that I currently have. Which is the cycle I go through at least 3 times a year. Or
Yeah.
I could just quit. I can do it. No one can stop me.
I mean, and you're getting really close to Memorial Day and 4th of July, which are really shitty times for your job.
Yeah.
You're like, don't remind me.
Don't remind me. I actually had forgotten until you said that.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to do that.
Not even forgotten. I had not realized that they were coming.
I honestly forgot that Memorial Day was coming up until I was looking at my calendar and my time off for ATX next month, and I realized, oh crap, I'm off during that week. I'm off Monday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. I'm only going into work on Tuesday, and they're probably gonna look at me like, what was the point of this? And I say to you, PTO availability. That is the only point. Otherwise, I would not have gone in at all that week.
So, some TV news. First thing off the bat. Gotta talk about it. This is pretty much coming hot off the presses as we're recording. Announced earlier today that NCIS Hawaii has been canceled. And we'll wrap up with its 3rd and current season, which I hate. I cannot even express to you all how much I hate that. For a variety of reasons. The first of which is that, I mean, we've had to put up with LL Cool J on this season reprising his character from NCIS LA, and I'm just it was almost like we put up with this, and then we can be the show can be in a stronger place, and we'll be good for 4th season. And now we're not getting a 4th season, and it's just awful. And we got a bunch of this other NCIS bullshit now of a Gibbs origin series and a show with a sexual abuser who the network had to pay out $9 million because of. And we just uncanceled SWAT. Did I mention we uncanceled SWAT? We uncanceled CBS.
Uncanceled SWAT.
CBS
so
uncanceled
annoying.
SWAT.
I think that's the second time this has happened for this show, which makes it even more obnoxious.
So I just kind of hate it. And it's during Lesbian Visibility Week and Lesbian International Day.
Mm-hmm.
And it's so disrespectful when your show has a very prominent lead lesbian relationship. And it's just awful. The rationalization behind it has been oh, well, they wanted to renew it, but CBS just has so much on its docket for next year. Well, you could have removed some of that docket if you weren't doing the other NCIS bullshit or SWAT.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And you just renewed all the other NCIS shows, including NCIS Sydney, which I like Sydney. We like Sydney. We talked about it on this podcast. But where's that same consideration? If you canceled NCIS LA halfway through its run, there would have been riots in the streets.
Oh, absolutely. And it's that thing we've talked about before with regards to shows like Law and Order and Law and Order SVU that they've been on for way too long. And for Law and Order to have a 20 season run and then for them to bring it back 10, 15 years later, it's that's so dumb. Come up with a new idea. Please give these other shows room to grow. And yet NCIS proper is still on the air and it doesn't need to be, and Hawaii's getting canceled. So it's annoying.
Well, and on top of that, as I said, we have a show coming that is going to feature a sexual abuser, a character played
Yep.
by a sexual abuser, and a character who was an Israeli Mossad officer in this climate.
Yep.
Like, and we're losing Hawaii because of that?
Mm-hmm.
Be fucking real with me. It's just like the lack of consideration that shows with queer characters get. Not even just queer characters, but diverse characters, and this was a female-led series. And I hate the rationalization that like it costs too much money to film in Hawaii because Hawaii 5 ran for like 10 fucking years. It did not suddenly
Yeah.
become more expensive to film in Hawaii.
Well, and so speaking to that kind of like statement about shows getting canceled, one of the big ones that like, I've talked about this in the past. I'm a big huge fan of Our Flag Means Death, and I was very upset when it got canceled. And one of the reasons they said they couldn't do it was that it was too expensive to make. But then the CEO, whatever his name or whatever his official title is, of Max got like a major financial income boost this year. And it's like, oh, instead of giving him a raise, we could have done this really queer show for the final season. There was only one other season that the writer, the creator had even, mapped out. There wasn't going to be anything more than that. Like, you could have done one more season of this show instead of giving that asshole more money when he didn't need it.
Yep.
I will forever be mad at the executives of these streaming slash TV channels because they make so much money and continue to get raises, and great television gets canceled because quote unquote it's too expensive to make it.
And imagine the television you could make if you weren't too busy settling Michael Weatherly's lawsuits.
I know.
Just imagine what could happen.
Imagine what you could do.
Yeah, but it sucks all the way around. Hawaii
Yep.
had a 4% boost from last year, and apparently this season is supposed to end on a cliffhanger with someone dying.
No.
And I swear to God, if I have to have a dead lesbian on my TV, I will actually burn this all down with no
I
resolution.
hate when that happens with shows.
I will actually burn this whole motherfucking thing down. Let's move on to something different, which is there was some fun Heartstopper casting this week.
I was actually going to bring this up, so I'm glad you did because I wanted to talk about it too.
Yeah. So you got Jonathan Bailey.
Oh, I love that man so much.
Why am I blanking on her name?
Haley Atwell.
Yes, thank you.
Yep. And a guy that I don't really know, but he seems pretty cool, Eddie Marsan, who's going to be Charlie's therapist, which I'm like, okay, great. That means they're definitely going to dive into the stuff they need to be diving into based on what's part of the comic, which makes me happy. And that theory that we had about potentially, since Nick's mom won't be around because Olivia Colman can't do it, his aunt will be, and that his aunt is played by Haley Atwell. And I'm like, oh, okay, that makes sense.
Who has gay aunt written all over her.
Right. And then Jonathan Bailey is playing this character that I want to say he like writes a book, and like the teens are interested in him, like they find, they're like a fan of him or whatever, and he ends up like becoming part of their lives. And like I forget exactly the details of it, but like yeah, he plays this like semi-celebrity type within the universe, and I'm like, that's kind of cool. And also Jonathan Bailey has that charming demeanor about him that it works perfectly.
Right.
I'm so excited about Jonathan Bailey. Like, oh my god, so excited.
It is very intriguing.
I'm very obsessed with him. It's fine. He's just so sweet. And anyway, his performance in Fellow Travelers was just so good.
So let's move on to the GOAT. The GOAT is a weekly segment we do here on the podcast where myself and Mads nominate a best TV character or episode of all time. And this is going to be a short one because we're just catching up. For our last one, I nominated Lost Season 6, entitled The End. And Mads, you nominated ER, entitled Be Still My Heart. And I came away with a win for that one.
Season 6, episode 13. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's fine. Listen, that was that's episode of ER is one of my favorites. Is it probably a strongest one overall? I have no idea. It's one that I absolutely love.
Mm.
Also, I've won enough. I'll let you win a few times.
But we don't have a new Go pick for this week because, as I mentioned in the last episode, we will be doing our past Goat wins in a bracket, which will hopefully, when you're listening to this, it should be well underway, hopefully into the second round. But we will catch up on this at another time and let you all know how that is going. But there should be a Google form that is up on our Twitter and Blue Sky and probably Instagram. So be sure and vote on that. I was trying to have all of the bracket picks on the Google form for you all to use. So keep an eye out for that and share it on whatever social media platform you are currently using. So without anything else, let's move on into the main part of our show.
Every time I look at you, I fall in love all over again. Every time I think of you, it all begins all over again. One little dream at night and I can dream all day. It only takes a memory to thrill me.
So to kick it off this week, we're continuing our rewatch of Adventure Time with Season 8, Episode 12, Preboot, Episode 13, Reboot, and Episode 14, Two Swords. So I told you last week that this is kind of the point where, like, things shift for the show and go into kind of the end. You know, kind of go into the march for the end.
Yep.
And a lot goes down in these episodes. So let's start with Preboot, which has Finn and Jake on a fun little adventure with Susan that gets interrupted by an actual human.
Yeah.
So what did you think?
It took me a minute to remember Susan's name, first of all. I was like, who is the big person with them? And then they said her name, and I was like, that's it. That's her name. But it was nice to see her again. It was nice to feel like I dropped in the middle of something and I was missing some of the pieces and then got some of them answered throughout the episode. I was like, the minute that kid showed up with the cyborg arm, I'm like, something's fishy here. Something's fishy. And I enjoy when I have that kind of moment at the beginning of an episode and then I get to the end and I'm like, I was right. I was correct. There is something fishy going on here.
Yeah.
But I like this as the setup to what happens in the next two episodes. It's not very often that we get episodes like that with Adventure Time, so I like the continued story aspect of it.
Yeah, Adventure Time typically doesn't arc this way, where one episode cleanly fits into another episode and then another episode. Outside of, like, the last miniseries, Stakes,
Right.
Most of the time, there's like an episode, and then it pays off seasons later in
Right.
some way.
And it's also nice when they, like you said, that whole paying off seasons later. Like, it's also nice when we get a character coming back in after not having seen them in a while, and it's like, oh right, this character is friendly with Finn and Jake. They all interact well together. What's going to happen with this situation? And like when Susan like starts acting all like computery, I was like, oh, something's up. Something's up. Like, something's going to happen with Susan. I'm not sure what it is, but I liked the idea that they were building up stakes, they were building up intrigue, and it doesn't quite fully pay off in that episode.
Mm-hmm.
You get like a glimmer of it in this episode that there's something else going on, because because Dr. Gross sees the little android thingy whatever on the side of her head and says something, like starts to say something, but then we don't get the full answer. And I'm like, "Oh, okay, so now I need to watch more. I need to find out what's going on." Um
Right.
and it's nice to have that every once in a while.
Yeah, and the fun thing about this, and I don't think I mentioned it when we watched the episode, but this was something that was subtly set up during the Super Plorp episode, which was the last big time we saw Susan, where you
Mhm.
could see the implant when she took her hat off.
I didn't even notice it in that episode. I'm going to have to go back and rewatch that episode because like I don't remember seeing that.
Mm. There's the moment where she's attacked by the big dog and it rips her hat off. And you can see the implant on the side of her head, which
Oh,
is
interesting.
really good seating for where we are here. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, I do love the moment at the end of the towards the end of the episode, um, where Doctor Gross is like, "Don't you want to know how I know you?" And the show's just like, "Nope, nope, won't be
Yeah.
moving past
Yeah.
this."
I was like, actually, I do want to know how you know her. Like, please explain. And the episode is like, da na na na. I was like, oh, you fucking assholes.
Fucking assholes.
I was like, that's the end. No, I want to know.
Yeah, yeah, because the show is subverting us by not addressing that, and also they probably don't fully know. But
They're like, we haven't figured that out yet. Carry on with the other things going on.
yeah. um, but yeah, what do you think of Doctor Gross?
Um, I feel like Dr. Gross like seems really awful on the like surface, but then the more you sit there and think about it, I'm like, she's not, or they're she they whatever. Dr. Gross isn't doing much different than what Bubblegum does.
Mm,
And so like we've accepted but what Bubblegum does. We haven't really like questioned it too much. Like we do say, okay, maybe you're going a little far, but like she's just doing it with machinery genetic stuff, and like it's not a whole lot different than what Bubblegum does. It's just a different category of experimentation. And so at first I was like, oh my god, she's ridiculous, she's awful, like whatever. But then I was like, no, she's not. She's kind of same thing, different font to Princess Bubblegum. So like,
right. I think we allow whether or not it's necessarily there. Um, we allow PB a level of ethics,
mhm.
just by nature of us knowing her, that she may or may not actually have. I like to believe she does. I like to believe there's a line for PB, that
Yeah,
Gross does not seem to have in the same way.
that's true.
Um, I think there's just a lot of signifying about Dr. Gross that is in every way a red flag.
Well, and the level of brainwashing that has happened to this young girl that they know,
Tiffany. Who is a boy?
Tiffany, yes.
Who is a boy?
I almost said Penelope and I was like that's not the right name. Um but like the level of manipulation and brainwashing that has happened to Tiffany, it is very interesting to see how she can see what Dr. Gross is wanting to do to Finn and Jake. And it's just like, come on, guys, just play along. And it's like, that's not playing along. Um, that no, like that's not what you think it is.
Mm-hmm.
This isn't a fun game. Like, Dr. Gross wants to like cut them open and do weird shit to them. Like,
Yeah, yeah. And I think I understand mostly because I've watched the other episodes that Tiffany has appeared in. Um, so I think I have a different context for Tiffany than you have, perhaps.
probably.
Where this is backstory that the episode does not give you because it expects you to tell right now. But Tiffany was Jake's old crime partner when they used to steal things back when Jake didn't know it
Okay.
was wrong. um, and Tiffany is always trying to like pull him back into the life, kind of. And so I see Tiffany as this character who, in a kind of codependent way, needs someone else to kind of have the world make sense.
Okay.
And now she has that with Dr. Gross. All right, he ha-
That makes sense.
he has that with Dr. Gross. You messed up my mind. He has that with Dr. Gross now, and he's willing to look other things by the wayside because she saved him from a worm,
Hmm.
from being eaten by a worm. I think that's my interpretation of Tiffany, at least.
Interesting. Yeah, I like you said, I think I'd probably look at Tiffany differently if I had known who Tiffany was.
Right? Yeah, and that's not me. Forgot to make us watch Tiffany episodes.
It's no big deal.
It's fine. I forgot that Tiffany plays up to the end here. But also, like, Susan is so right. Don't take candy from people.
Yes.
You don't know where that candy's been. Like,
Exactly.
there are people at work.
Stranger danger.
Yeah, there are customers at work who try to give me stuff, and I'm like, I'm not taking that.
Don't you know that people put drugs in their candy?
I do like that Susan is kind of stupid, but also she's not that stupid.
Mm-mm. She comes across as stupid, but she's smarter than she looks.
Yeah, she's just kind of big and buff and uses simple words. Let's push on into Reboot. The show demonstrates what Susan can actually do.
Yeah,
Or
Susan was terrifying in
she's
this
terrifying.
episode.
Yeah, she has been programmed by someone um, to be an
To be,
unstoppable killing machine.
yeah, to be on a murderous rampage, and it's it's terrifying, but also like, oh my god, this is so fucking cool. Like, never mind the fact that she's stomping on Finn and Jake. Like, never mind that. Like that's fine. It's still pretty damn cool. Like,
Yeah, yeah, and this is the kind of thing that, given how little we know about where Susan actually came from,
hmm,
because we know that she was with the fish people, but she's not
yep,
a fish person. She is a
nope.
human.
She is a very large human.
She's a very large human, and we don't actually know where she came from or where the other humans are. Like, as far as we know, the last time that we saw the humans were back in Stakes, where they were on the ship and they
Yep.
were taking off somewhere unknown. So whatever the humans did to Susan seems to have turned her into some kind of a super soldier, and so scary.
It's very terrifying to think that like there's an unknown person out there that is doing this kind of work and we don't know who they are.
Yes, absolutely.
Like, can we please have the answer to that? I would like to know who to avoid. Thank you.
Yeah. I did like the really simple narrative work at the beginning of this episode that like Finn can take on a giant eel because a giant shocky eel because he already had the thing from the Spirit of the Forest back in that Huntress Wizard episode,
Yes.
so he can't be electrified. And the show's just
Mm-hmm.
like, we trust that you'll get that
We trust that you'll remember that detail
without us
because
having to tell you.
which is very big for a show to do because there aren't very many shows that trust us to remember things or details or to keep track of lore and backstory on characters. A lot of times they make mistakes and they just assume we're not going to notice.
Yeah.
Or they do something and they're like, oh, we need to explain why this is happening. And it's like, no, you don't. We understand because we remember.
Mm-hmm. Especially a show aimed at children,
Yes.
whose audience is children. That kind of faith that kids will actually remember and they'll retain this and they will be able to understand what is happening without you having to hold their hand in any way, shape, or form. But even if you don't remember, it's still funny to watch Finn ride a giant eel.
It's funny to watch that and then to watch Jake try to attack and he's like, no, Jake, you'll get electrocuted. It's just like, right, because Jake can't touch this eel.
Right, yes, yes.
Jake doesn't have that ability.
Does not have that ability. Neither does Susan.
I also really enjoyed seeing PB and the banana guards show up again. But also seeing Jake take on these very interesting forms that we've never seen before, all in an attempt to try and save Finn. Um, it's just goes to show that like he has this ability to do whatever he wants with his body.
Yes.
And that also includes morphing with Jake if that is the or morphing with Finn if that is what needs to happen.
Yeah, the Jake suits. Yeah, which has shown up in a couple episodes we didn't watch. But yeah, it's a fun detail.
Also, the fact that they hit the device on her head, and they showed a scene of a computer saying, um, that she's like sent off a signal like of where she's located, and it's like, okay, that's I have questions.
Right.
I have so many questions.
So someone is tracking it or has been tracking it.
Right. But also the other thing, like it goes back to Dr. Gross in the previous episode, like reading the barcode on her device and knowing exactly what that is. And it's just like, okay, you're this these few episodes are raising so many more questions that I'm just like, I need answers. And I don't ever feel this way about this show. I usually am just like, it's a question, but like it's not one that's pressing on my brain that I'm constantly thinking about. But these questions are ones that I haven't stopped thinking about. So it's like, I need these answers. And then when Jake's Finn sword morphed with the grass sword and becomes this like grass creature, I'm like, okay, what just happened?
Yes.
And then of course, luckily, once we get into the next episode, like luckily we get a bit of the answers there, but it's still like, what the fuck just happened?
Yeah. Well, like that's the weird thing because like, for me, I view this episode as like the season finale. IMDb and Max and Hulu don't agree with me on that, but like this feels like the end of a season. I don't know necessarily what season. The end of season 7 doesn't feel awful to me. But like, yeah, like this feels like such a big like what the fuck moment of the grass fin just appearing out of nowhere.
They were like, you thought you saw everything with this show. Think again.
Yeah. Mhm. Yeah, and the emergence of Grassfin is really the point that I feel like this is the show pivoting.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like this is a show going like, all right, now we're going to the end. You
Yeah.
know, like this is an act break for the show. I want to get to Two Swords real quick, but first I do want to say, and these are kind of I have two things, but these are kind of the same thought. A, it was nice to see Rattleballs back, and B, devastating to see Rattleballs die.
Yes.
Just dead. No chance of resurrection. No chance of coming back. Just dead. Which is
Yeah.
really rough.
It is.
Let's let's move over to Two Swords. So what do you think about Grassfin?
I'm trying to figure it out. Like, I'm still trying to figure it out. Like,
Mm-hmm.
it's very confusing to me that there are two fins and they seem to be the same fin. Um and when Finn said, "Oh, it's a Finn from another like alternate universe," I was like, "Oh, that makes sense now." And then PB was like, "No, I think they're from the same." And I'm like, "What? No, you're hurting my brain." Um, and I do know that like I know they like brought in the whole spider demon thing. I don't know if I quite understand the significance of that or like
Yeah,
what is going on.
I don't care for the grass demon. It's the grass squid. Um, yeah, I don't care for that at all. But I mean, so I think like the trail, the like series of events. Um, the Finn sword gets broken. Uh,
Mhm. Yep.
the grass sword makes its way inside there and infects it and corrupts the fin inside the Finn sword.
Yep.
Um,
Which then gets set free when the grass sword morphs with the fin sword.
yeah, fully morphs with the Finn sword.
Yeah.
Like the grass sword was, or the Finn sword, I guess, kind of like the Finn sword and the grass sword now
Mhm.
working in connection. We're like waiting for its moment, and this was just it.
Yeah.
Um, and so like PB's right. This is just Finn. Like the Finn from the Finn sword is grass Finn. Um, Mixed with the whatever the grass demon did.
Mhm.
Um, I do like Grassfin though. Hayden Ezzy, who voices Grassfin, I think is doing a very good like impersonation of Finn.
Uh-huh.
Like it's a good like interpretation of like the same voice that like Jeremy Shada has. And, like it's just like that
Mhm.
1 degree off, you know.
Yeah.
It's very good.
It, yeah. And I think that makes it slightly creepy that it's like so similar. You're just like, no, this like really legitimately feels like a clone. Like what is going on? And I found it interesting that he goes, grass fin, whatever, goes to the treehouse and just starts destroying BMO's like dishes and silverware, and poor BMO is terrified. Poor BMO. BMO didn't deserve this.
Yeah. Mm.
Um, but yeah, it's also if you pay like I was also trying to pay attention to like what was going on in the hospital when Princess Bubblegum was giving Finn a robotic arm. Like, you see the banana guards bring Susan on a stretcher. And so it's like, oh, well, are we going to find out if she's okay?
Mm-hmm.
Which I feel like we don't really,
Yeah, we
not
don't
yet.
we don't find that out this episode.
Yeah, so.
You also see the shot of Jake just pancaked,
Yeah.
just laying on another bed, just fully flat.
Yeah. And then we see him emerge as himself when he berates Finn for grass Finn terrifying BMO. He's like, we have to go deal with this. He's upsetting BMO. He's upsetting our child. That's basically like what I read it as. I was like,
Oh yeah.
okay, Jake and Finn are the parents, and he's like, we need to go home now because our baby is crying because a strange man has shown up in our house.
Oh yeah. No, that's definitely like two parents out to dinner and they get a call from the babysitter.
Yeah, exactly. But like, it's also interesting that Grass Finn truly believes that he is Finn, and it's because he sees his reflection that he starts like freaking out at the treehouse. But like, it's just fascinating that it's like, okay, they're both Finn, but like any other time a show has done, another iteration of a character, something is missing from one version, from each version of them, that makes them not fully whole. But in this instance, like, both Finns seem to be complete. They know the memories, they know all this stuff, and it's just like, huh, interesting. Like, it's like this grass Finn was inside him and now he's detached from him, but there hasn't been any like damage to human Finn.
Right, because and I think the important thing of that is how long this has been in the works, you know,
Mm-hmm.
ever since
Yeah.
like that Prismo episode,
Yep.
and the creation of the Fin Sword. And so I feel like the show has trained us to be like, these are two separate and distinct Fins.
Yep.
The Finn that has been doing stuff for the past few seasons and the Finn that has been in the sword. And this is just an
Helping the
extension
Finn
of
do
that.
stuff.
Yeah,
Yeah.
this is just an
Yep.
extension of that.
Yeah. It's very fascinating.
Yeah,
Very interesting.
and here, I feel like the important thing is just Finn coming to that place of acceptance of another Finn.
Yep.
Both like
Yeah, because you see him at the end of the episode, they're getting ready for bed, and, Jake is still questioning the other Finn, and Finn's kind of just like, it's whatever. He'll be here as long as he needs to be here. It's fine. We're fine. And it's just like, okay.
yeah, no, like that moment where Grassfin is like, maybe I'm not who I am, and Finn just like throws his arm over his shoulder and is like, of course we are. Like it's just that really comforting bit of like outward acceptance and also self acceptance, you know?
Yep.
Um and like we've kind of talked about this with Finn, but it's like it is this bit of introspection that Finn is not always prone to do, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Look inside, see who you are, and go, yeah, this is good.
Yep.
And so now we have like this actual personification of that idea in Grassfin,
Yep.
which I think is really neat. But I do love how immediately Jake is not about this.
Yeah, Jake's like, I don't trust it.
I don't like this at all. Like I love the interaction with them in the treehouse. just like trying to circle around Graspin, and he's like, "You have to look at my anger in my eyes. You have to take it into your soul." It's really good.
Yes.
I think this is one of the most interesting things that the show could have done at this point. This leaves it to set it off in like I think a really interesting direction.
Yeah, it turns things on its head a bit, and so now we're like, okay, so here's the new normal. Let's see where this takes us.
Yeah, and we really are in home stretch now. I counted it out earlier today. We have 8 weeks left of Adventure Time.
It's gonna be so sad.
Yeah. So next week, we are going to be talking about season 8, episode 15, "Do No Harm." I'm just going to have us do 2 episodes next week because I feel like some of this can be. Season 8, episode 15, "Do No Harm," and episode 19, "Jelly Beans Have Power." Moving on to our next show, Dimension 20, "Escape from the Bloodkeep," episode 4, "Airship Ambush." And as the episode title would indicate, big airship battle.
Pretty much. And I just have one thing to say. It's not really space, but I'm gonna call them space pirates.
Space pirates. Yep, pretty much.
It's not really space, it's just air, but space pirates sounds better. Air pirates doesn't sound as cool.
It's very like Treasure Planet. Like
Yes, that's exactly what I was thinking as I was like watching the episode. I was like, man, now I really want to watch Treasure Planet.
Yeah.
I mean, I understand that battle episodes are meant to be somewhat tedious and whatnot. I don't hate them, but I don't tend to like them more than the non-battle episodes.
Right.
Because I just feel like I'm like, okay, cool, they're fighting, like, you know, it is what it is. And that's especially what I felt like with this episode. I felt like it was just a long, tedious battle that I was just like, I'd rather hear about it later. Do a quick recap for me later on. I don't need to watch this. It's fine. Just tell me who dies. It's fine.
Well, I think the thing that's so interesting to me about this battle episode is that it ends with them all failing.
Yeah.
Like, they all failed. They all fell off the airship.
They did indeed fall off the airship. Some of them a little more spectacularly than the others.
So it does leave us in a really interesting place of like, oh, where do we go from here? Can our characters survive falling thousands of feet?
Some of them can. I don't think all of them can, though.
I mean, I definitely feel like Leland can survive.
Yeah, I was thinking Leland and Maggie are probably the only ones.
Maybe. I mean, Maggie's pregnant.
Oh, that's right. I keep forgetting that Maggie's pregnant. I keep forgetting that she's pregnant. Important plot point, Mads. But also, like, it's not very early. I mean, we've only watched Fantasy High Season 1 and this, but, like, it doesn't seem like very often that they full-on fail at a battle, mission, battle, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And so, like, yes, again, this was tedious, but there were interesting parts. I mean, the ending is very interesting. It's like, oh, you guys wah. Like, you all just kind of did not do what you were supposed to.
Right. Yeah. Well, also, it's this battle of, like, the walls closing in around them. Like, funny enough, of them being on an airship, like, everything is kind of converging on them. They have to contend with both the forces from the elves, the light side, and also their own forces, and like the orc, who only really wants to die, has no greater ambition than dying.
He just wants to die.
Yeah, and the trolls, who are consistently upset that someone opened a door.
I will say it was very interesting that, first of all, that that Dimension 20 decided that Ents were also still on the table. Like, I found that really fun.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, okay, we like the Ents. Ents are great. I'm glad they carried over from quote unquote Lord of the Rings um into this universe, but also that, like, yes, they defeated the Ent, but he was like, "Oh, I'm going down with major damage points to
Yeah.
the ship." That was a good moment. It was just like, "Oh no, you've killed me. Oh, that's okay. You're still not going to succeed because I've damaged the ship."
It is like the best, like pulling the rug out from under you, right? Of like, all right,
Yeah.
we got a goal. Our goal is just take the airship, go. And Brennan's like, what if there was no airship?
What if it didn't survive the battle?
Yeah. What if I took the airship from you? What would that look like?
And I like that about Brennan. Like, he's like, "Oh, you thought this was what was going to happen? Think again."
Think again. Yeah, he's always really
He's always pulling a good twist, and I like that.
mm-hmm. He's always really savvy about like what his players are after for, whether or not it would make it more interesting to give them that or not give them that.
Mm-hmm.
And he always seems really keyed in on that because he's not opposed to giving characters the thing they want.
Right. I mean, it wouldn't be interesting if he constantly thwarted their every move. Like,
Yeah,
it would not end up being a good campaign. You need to be able to have that give and take.
mm-hmm.
And he has that perfect balance.
I would say that he's can anticipate his players' needs and what they're going to do.
Mm-hmm.
But that is not necessarily always true in this campaign.
I also feel like we saw that a little bit in Fantasy High freshman year with the, like, especially with that battle with the corn cob children things,
Yes.
whatever. He was just like, "Oh, I did not anticipate you all dying and sucking at this." He's like, "Okay, I need to do something to save you or we have no campaign."
Right. Well, you could tell there's that moment of like, there's no way I could have possibly predicted that you would take multiple turns jumping on tables.
Yes. It was moments like that where you could kind of see the frustration coming out, and it's just like, stop jumping on tables. Ignore the tables.
But Brennan is at all times trying to figure out a way to kill his characters. And this is maybe
He just doesn't want to be alive.
Yeah, and this is maybe the closest he gets that we've seen so far of Brennan putting them in severe peril. I'm almost tempted to just leave it here because our next episode.
Yeah, I feel like we could continue.
Yeah.
Diving into that.
Yes.
With the next episode.
So let's continue on to our next show, which is Fallout, which we previewed last week. We are continuing here.
Mm-hmm.
So since the last time we talked, I have watched the entire series.
And I've watched a couple episodes.
Yes.
Couple more episodes. So I'm about halfway done.
Okay. And I still think this is excellent.
It's really good.
Really good. I think people had talked about like episode 3 being really rocky, and it is.
Mm-hmm.
It does a lot of like getting characters into places that I think is inelegant.
Yeah, it struggles a bit.
Yeah.
But it's not so terrible that I didn't want to continue watching.
Yeah. Well, speaking of the discourse, Mads, there's something we have to settle right here and now. The ghoul, hot or not?
The ghoul.
The ghoul. Walton Goggins' character.
Oh,
Hot or not?
I not. To be fair, I am. Let's be okay. Let's give some back story on me. To be fair, I'm asexual,
Right.
so I don't. My viewpoint of people is not from a oh my god, I would totally bang that person
Just asking for a
perspective.
gut feeling.
The gut feeling, he has no nose, and it bothers me. So it is a not.
I'm about to go hot. It's a hard hot.
But here's the thing. You also have a hot thing for Walter Goggins, so I feel like you're
That's
biased.
true. I mean, I won't deny that.
But to be fair, like when he wasn't the ghoul, like all right, I could see it. Like, whatever. But I like him as a character. He's a very, very fascinating character, but
Mm,
no, the nose just really bothers me. It's just no.
right.
You're allowed to think what you want.
Yeah, I'm about to side with the rest of the internet on this one and say hot. Yeah, yeah. But that being said,
I will say episode 3 was kind of but episode 4 was really, really good. Um, we had Lucy and the ghoul coming upon this, like, I don't know what to call it, like a hospital kind of thing, whatever, but like the robot thing is doing experimentation on people, um, and like turning them into ghouls. Um, and then you've got Norm in Vault 33 finding out that Vault 32 has issues,
yes.
to put it lightly. Vault 32 has some issues.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but the ghouls, I'm trying to think the actor. Hold on, I'm looking him up. Da, 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 da. Matty Cardropel is in everything. And here he shows up in this show, and I'm like, you are always that odd, kind of loser esque character that's just there all the time. Like, you're just in every show.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, when he showed up, I was like, oh, that guy. I was like, oh, he's up to no good because he's never up to any good. Like, he's always doing something nefarious in some way.
Yeah.
And I was not wrong. I was not wrong at all.
Yeah. Yeah. But yeah. Speaking of episode 4, Matt Berry, um, our beloved Matt Berry from What We Do in the
Mm-hmm.
Shadows, appearing as
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 Snip
the
Snip.
robot. Yeah, Snip
Yes.
Snip. Um, who we also see um, in live action form in another episode as well. And that's really fun. God, I love seeing Matt Berry.
I love his skills. Like, he's just so good. I recognized the voice. I was like, oh, I know that voice.
Oh yeah, oh yeah.
I was like, I know that voice. There was no there was no question. I was like, yep, that's Matt Berry.
Um, but I love the rest of the season, where everything that you think is like a diversion or like a zig where you think it's gonna zag, is
Mm-hmm.
actually layering in themes and things that will play in very strongly at the end of the season. So, like for example, they Lucy goes to another vault, Vault 4, for a couple
Okay.
episodes, and you're does a lot of interesting things, but there's also like, oh, we're kind of like taking a turn here, but it's all like building. It's all like that little like what former TV critic Ryan McGee would call the the micro pushing the macro, like
Mm-hmm.
these little things that are building up to like this bigger thing. Little
Yeah.
things that you don't even really realize or appreciate are working towards like this bigger angle. And so like the
Yeah.
rest of the season, I think it's really good. It gets into like a lot of like vault tech stuff and what's going on in like Vault 31, um, and particularly like a lot of like prequel stuff, like a lot of like the
Mm-hmm.
pre-bombing stuff with Walton Goggins' character, um, and it's just
Yeah, we did get to see a little bit of that where like we meet um his wife and his kid a little bit more, and we get to see that he was the original like stand-in for the cartoonish character that is all over the vaults
mm-hmm.
with these rules and these theories and or not theories rules and like regulations, I guess is the right word. I don't know, but he's the vault guy like
Yeah,
in my head. Like that's what I think of him as. So that was interesting to see. I'm intrigued to find out more because like still have to find out how he has survived this whole time.
mm-hmm.
Like we've kind of gotten hints at it, but like okay, but why him and not other people, um so I'm intrigued to learn more. I will say, like, starting off, I wasn't sure we'd really see much of Norm, and I'm glad to find out that we are seeing more of him. Because I don't know, I find it interesting that we're still seeing stuff from the vaults.
yeah, and I felt that way too in the early episodes of like, I don't know if I need to keep spending time in Vault 33. Um,
Mm-hmm.
but it builds to some really interesting stuff. Um, I will say
Yeah,
that
it's not
uh,
I was just gonna say it's nice that they don't go back to it until like what is it, like 3 or 4? Like it's nice. Like, okay,
yes,
she leaves the vaults. We don't really see the vaults again for a few more episodes. It's not something that's heavy handed talked about, but it is nice to go back to these characters and be like, okay, what are they doing? Are they questioning things now because of what's happened? Because it's got to be building in some way because it's not a coincidence that we start off the story with her in the vaults.
mm, yeah, um, yeah, and because this is a Jonathan Nolan production, um, you can kind of tell like the points where Nolan is threatening to like what was his show? Um, you can tell the moments where like he's threatening to go into like Westworld territory, and
Mm-hmm.
he's just like restraining it just a little bit, like kind of streamlining mythology, where like, okay, you have learned something, Nolan.
Mm-hmm.
You're not going like full Westworld, and like that's good because this could go off the rails easy,
Yeah.
um, especially given where the season leaves us. Yeah, this could go off the rails in a hurry. Um, just with how intricate some of this is.
Mm-hmm.
uh,
I didn't realize he did Person of Interest.
Yes.
Makes sense that Michael Emerson's character in this and Person of Interest are very similar.
Oh yeah, yeah. No, I remember back when like the Dark Knight came out, and people
Mm.
were asking Christopher Nolan like, did you like what more thoughts do you have on like the surveillance state? And Christopher Nolan's like, oh, I didn't really think about that. It's like, no, you didn't think about that because that's all Jonathan Nolan.
Yeah, I didn't realize that he's brothers to Christopher Nolan either. Here's the thing, I don't really know Jonathan Nolan that well. Like, I've heard his name a couple times, but I've never like thought to put it together with, oh, his brother is possible, he could potentially be Christopher Nolan's brother, but like, my brain did not connect that together.
Yeah.
I should have. It's very easy. The names are very, I mean, it's right there, but to be fair, not everyone with the same last name is related to each other. So,
Sure. Yeah. Yeah.
but with a name like Nolan, I mean, it's chances are they're related.
Yeah. Yeah. And yeah, Jonathan Nolan has worked on a number of Christopher Nolan movies.
Yeah.
But yeah, yeah.
But yeah, the series is good so far. I still don't really care that much about the big robot dude and his squire. I don't give a shit about any of that.
Yeah,
Like, I really don't.
I don't care about Maximus. And the Knights of the Brotherhood, the
Knights of the Brotherhood, that's it.
yeah, the Brotherhood of Steel. Like, I don't care about that. Speaking of that, they introduce a romance between Maximus and Lucy, and I'm like, I don't. You're no, just no.
Why?
I don't care. This isn't working.
I would be more intrigued if there was a romance introduced between the ghoul and Lucy, to be honest. It'd be total enemies to lovers. Come on.
Yeah,
It'd
yeah.
be fun.
Yeah.
Also, can I talk about the creature that he uses her as bait for and how it is very much a ginormous oxalotl? I'm like, that is a futuristic oxalotl. Thank you very much. It's just not as cute as the little normal ones are.
Mm-hmm.
It's terrifying.
Yeah, yeah.
I was like, wait, is that is that an oxalotl? And then it like had the like spiny things on its head. I was like, yes, that is an oxalotl. Anyways, we can talk more about this next week after I've hopefully finished the season.
Okay, cool. Because I do have things to say.
Of course, and I appreciate you not spoiling things for me.
Yeah.
I would be very upset.
So let's move on to our next show, which is the Sympathizer, which is on HBO. The first 2 episodes are out, and I watched both.
I have watched both as well.
Cool, excellent. There's a lot to say about the show, but the first thing I want to talk about, which is perhaps the least germane. Are we supposed to think that Robert Downey Jr. is playing 2 separate characters on the show?
I don't know. Like, I thought at first I thought, okay, maybe he's also a two-timing spy. Like, maybe he's, but like, I just think he's a fucking idiot. I just think he's a fucking racist asshole, like, idiot. You know what I mean? Like,
right. I
also think Robert Downey Jr. is trying too hard. And maybe that's just me. Like, I don't care for any of his scenes. I'm just like, whatever, go away.
Right, like I didn't know if the Oriental professor was like another cover.
Right.
Like, is this another CIA cover?
Like, I don't know. I don't know. But I do I messaged you and was like, "Oh, I didn't even realize Robert Downey Jr. was in this," and you're like, "Oh yeah, he's definitely in
Oh, he's
this,"
definitely
and
in
I was
this.
just like, and I was just like, I didn't understand why you said it like that, but then like as I watched the second episode, I was like, oh, I get it. Like he's so annoying. I'm so done with him. I'm so over it. Like he's not a character I care about. Um, I I just am like, ugh, go away. Like just you're not important to. I mean, I guess you're important to the story, but I don't care. Um,
Well,
but I going into this show, I vaguely knew what it was about because I was like, okay, this is on my radar. I kind of want to see it. It sounds interesting, but I didn't really look into the cast, like who was in the cast, and so like I was surprised that Robert Downey Jr. was there, and then Sandra Oh, and I'm like, oh my god,
oh my
yes.
god, yes.
I was like, she showed up, and I was like, hell fucking yes. And then he ends up having sex with her and like having this relationship with her, and I'm like, hell yes. I'm like, get it. Like, Sandra, you can have whoever you want. Like,
Yeah, yeah. Well,
yes.
I was like, you know what? I get it. I get it. Do it. Go for it.
Exactly. I also just really love how many dirty looks she gives Robert Downey Jr.'s character because it's serving cunt, and I love it.
Yes, yes. Well, like that's part of the reason why I'm hoping that like the Oriental Professor is like that character is the like another CIA cover because like
Hmm.
then that would imply that Sandra O's character is like also working for the CIA.
Oh, that would be interesting.
Yeah, which like another another Sandra O character doing espionage work. Yes, please.
I could see that being a potential like future revelation. Um,
Yeah, but like right now,
that would be so cool.
I'm just really interested why they would have Downey play two different characters on the show if they're not
Yeah,
supposed
because
to be the same person.
yeah, because there's no way. Because the way he is around the general and this kid, I still haven't figured out this kid's name, but it's fine. Not
He doesn't
important.
even have a
It
name. His
doesn't
name
really
is
matter.
just the captain.
Oh, he doesn't have a name. Okay, good. I'm glad to know that I'm not crazy and just haven't figured out his name. But like when he's around the general and this kid, when they're in Saigon, like he's one guy, but then they're in LA and he's this totally different person, and because I kind of liked him in the first episode. I was like, you know what, I don't hate this guy. Like he is what he is. He's a white guy who can speak both languages, and he seems fairly close to this young kid, and whatever. Like this could be interesting. And then we get to episode 2 and they're in LA and he's this extremely, I don't know if he's purposely racist, but like he's very racist. And he's and I'm just like, these are two different people. Like so yeah, I would hope that it's a CIA situation because otherwise they've jumped the shark with this character. Like it's just like I don't understand.
Right. Well, like there's that line of that the captain makes of like, thank you for the plane tickets. And I was like, oh, so he knows this is the CIA guy. But then like
Yeah.
the rest of the episode does not bear that fruit. Um, and like when he sees the actual CIA guy again, um, it's like, oh, I haven't seen you since Saigon. It's like, do you know this is the same person or not? Like,
Yeah,
are
it's
you playing the same person or are you not? And if you're not, like,
yeah.
why make that decision? Is this just like an acting vehicle for Downey or what? Because the first episode, I was
Yeah.
like, did they could they not get like John C. McGinley? Because this feels like a character designed for John C. McGinley.
Mhm.
Um, and then the second episode is just absurd. Like Downey's playing it very big.
Yeah.
Which like Tony Stark
Yeah.
is a big character, but this feels big in like
Mhm.
a Tropic Thunder kind of way, you know?
Yeah. I'm glad you brought up the John C. McGinley part because I'm like, Robert Downey Jr.'s hair in this
It's
bothers
insane.
me. Bothers me so much. Um, but I'm also intrigued to see where things go with the general because like it's very obvious that like he's not doing well in America. I mean, he's drinking a lot, he's running a liquor store which is giving him more access to alcohol.
Mm,
He's very paranoid about there being a mole, which I mean, he has every right to be because there is a mole. But
yeah.
but like, you know, he's not as put together as he was in Saigon. And so like I feel like something's going to come to a head with this character and it's going to explode in a very nasty, messy way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah.
I also think that his friend is going to cause some kind of conflict in some way at some point. Um because he's not, I mean, I really hope he just stays being that guy that's kind of just there every once in a while and is super depressed and super sad because his wife and kid were killed.
Mm-hmm.
Which teach but I feel like that's going to motivate him to do stupid rash things. And I feel like that's potentially going to cause an explosion in accordance with whatever's going to go down with the general.
Right. Yes.
You can tell that something's boiling, but I'm not quite sure exactly what it is yet.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah. Also, we know he ends up in like a prison situation of some kind because this is him recounting what happened.
Right. And
So
then
I'm curious to see how he gets there.
yeah, and there's a lot of good like unreliable narrator ness to this,
Mhm.
you know. Um,
Yep.
so I'm really enjoying that aspect of it, and like the sheer just like spycraft too.
Mhm.
Like this feels in a weird way.
I love the whole hidden messages stuff.
Yeah,
Like that shit's so cool.
yeah, and in a weird way, it feels like a dark cousin to like Alias,
Yep.
you know, of like here's like double agent um spy work, and it's like, oh, this is really good.
Yep.
It's really good. Um, yeah, so I'm really enjoying that aspect of it. I have to say I did laugh in the sequence in the General's liquor store where it's like, yes, all of the liquor in there looks exactly like current liquor. As someone who works in liquor, um, like
Mhm.
those are just current liquor bottles.
Yep.
Those are all just current liquor bottles and labels. In an industry that changes
Yep.
their bottles and labels every 2 years, I'm like, yes, I'm sure 60 years later, 50 years later, they look
Right.
exactly like that. Which is not specific to the Sympathizer, uh, because every show does that, but I always think it's funny. Um, but yeah,
I always look for those little like Easter eggs in the background or
mm,
whatever, to see like where they mess up.
yeah. Um, but yeah, I think this is off. This is a really promising start.
Yep.
Uh,
I'm more intrigued by it than I was initially, which is great.
right, yeah. The downy of it aside.
Yeah. I wish they would have picked somebody else, but that's just me. I'm just here's my thing. I don't hate Robert Downey Jr., but I also don't love Robert Downey Jr. So like it I I could take him or leave him. And this is definitely a leave him kind of role.
Like
I
it is kind
just
of wild that he came off Oppenheimer and did this. Like,
yeah, I don't know.
uh, uh, let's move on to the girls on the bus. Uh, episode 8. Life is a highway. Um, so I should note that I did not catch up on the show, but just diving right into episode 8.
Okay.
I made that math. I was like, I'm not gonna catch up, but I do want to watch the show. Um,
I I'm so I previously said that I'm very interested in Scott Foley's character. I find him very intriguing. And this at the end of this episode, we see him kind of take off that charming persona when he's in his car alone talking to whoever it is on the phone,
mhm.
and you see the real politician side of him. And you're just like, "Oh, maybe he's not as great as he seems to be." Um so I'm interested to see. We have I think two more episodes of this show. Interested to see what plays out with him. So but
Well, yeah, because I feel like
I
no
like
one.
the sorry, go ahead.
Well, I was gonna say like I feel like no one goes through the process of like running for president um, if you're not a little, you know, like if you're not like a little bit of
Mhm.
a scoundrel, because that's
Yeah,
what it requires.
absolutely. Um and I just find it very interesting because yeah, up to this point he's really presented himself as this sweet, kind person. There have been moments where we thought, oh, something's going to come out, and it ends up being something totally different, and you're just like, oh, he just continues to be this really nice guy who happens to be a politician. And now you're seeing behind closed doors he's kind of a ruthless asshole. Okay, good to know that he's not like completely naive as he seems. um which means he could be a potentially bigger contender than anyone in the media is giving him credit for.
Yeah, yeah,
So I mean, we'll have to wait and see. So
yeah. This show has a really clear eyed look at politicians in general.
mhm.
Like between like his character and the freshman and Walker, of like these are just like people that you should not necessarily be aspiring to or looking up to or putting hopes upon.
And I like that with the four women, we're seeing that general optimism that they started off having at the very beginning of the show, like slowly start to wither away due to whatever circumstance they come across. So, like, with Sadie, it's she gets thrown under the bus after, a coworker finds out that she's been sleeping with um one of the guys in Walker's campaign. Um, and then she finds out she's pregnant, and like that's just throwing everything off. Her credibility is kind of shot with her job, so like she's trying to build it back up. And then you've got what's her face, who's the mom, and she's trying to navigate her very difficult relationship with her father and her daughter, and now her husband's mad at her, and so like she's kind of just not caring that much about the politics anymore either. She's got her own personal shit storm to deal with. And it's just so, and then there's the naive influencer girl who just came into this thinking, oh well, the freshman's great and wonderful and like all these things, and she's so, I don't want to say stupid, but like she's kind of stupid. And now she's realizing, oh, I've been stupid. I have put my trust in the wrong people. Um, I, slept with someone in the freshman's campaign, and now they, use that against me to get me to speak highly of their candidate. And it's not something I'm feel comfortable with. And so, like, it's great to see them have these moments of clarity, but then also, instead of like continuing to hate each other, they're coming closer together.
Mm. Yeah.
Like, I really appreciate the moment in this episode where they all kind of like converge on Sadie's hotel room and are like, let's watch this movie together. Let's be friends. Let's do this. Yes, we have different goals with regards to the jobs that we're doing, but that doesn't mean we can't be friends. And I do like that.
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't know. The show's been up and down throughout this throughout these 8 episodes, and I've felt differently based on the episode, but like this episode was a good one. um I really did like seeing Sadie and why her name's escaping me
Uh,
right this second.
Kimberlyn.
Kimberlyn, thank you. I knew it was something weird. Sadie and Kimberlyn like really come together, and Sadie like gets Kimberlyn a meeting with Gail King, and like that's cool. Like that's so cool. And like Kimberlyn's like, I don't agree with you getting an abortion, but I'm going to support you because you're my friend. Um and like I said, this episode was more about them than it was about the actual politics, which was nice.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and it's all wrapped up in this, abortion episode, which is highlighting kind of the insane place that we are at in a post-stops world. Um,
Yep.
and I think the show's doing a really interesting job with Kimberlyn, in that it's walking a really delicate line with her of
Mhm.
trying to portray a reasonable conservative, which I'm not convinced exists, but I'll allow the fantasy of the show. Um, where you have a person who has beliefs and you know she has beliefs and she will let you know she has said beliefs if you ask her,
Mhm.
but isn't necessarily steadfast and isn't like alienatable. um,
Mhm.
so I think all that is really interesting, and like just the way that um, they're writing that character. And I think a lot of that comes down to the actress who just
It
in
does.
really silent, like physical acting lets you know that she hates this. Like she hates
Yep.
that Sadie cannot just get an abortion. You know.
Yeah.
Um,
And I think it's also just it's really good writing over the course of the season because, when we're first introduced to Kimberlyn, she's very steadfast, she's very standoffish. She's like, "You are liberal, I'm conservative. I will not mix with you. I'm not going to talk to you. We don't have similar viewpoints on the world. There's no way we could ever have a conversation that is anything less than, antagonistic." And yen but then as the season progresses, we've realized that she works for Liberty News, but she hates her job. She doesn't like that she's constantly overlooked because she is black. She does not like that, she that her coworkers are actually somewhat racist. She but she feels like that's the only thing that she can do in order to get to the job that she really wants, which we kind of find out what her dream job actually is in this episode, and it's nice to see that because we've seen a lot of conflict with her in her personal life, and so it's nice to see her feel comfortable enough to tell Sadie, I actually want to do something similar to what Gail King does. That's my, dream role in this world. and I feel like I have to do these horrible things that I don't like and I don't 100% stand behind in order to get there. And I think it's the most human she's ever been.
Yeah. Well, and it's good dichotomy between like her and Sadie in the scene of what is your dream job? I don't have a dream job versus Sadie's without hesitation, I'm doing my dream job and I could not imagine doing anything else and it makes me immensely happy.
Yeah.
Um and it's just like it's that surefireness that Sadie has versus the like begrudging indifference,
Mm-hmm.
which I think is really
Yep.
really interesting, and that dynamic I think is really
Yeah, I agree.
good. And I love the scene. I love the scene of Sadie in the post office, and the fantasy of her uh, beating the shit out of that.
That guy is like, that is literally the epitome of I hate my
I hate
job.
my job.
Like, he literally, like, he could have unlocked that door at 1 minute to 5 the
Mm-hmm.
previous day. He could have let her in to get her package, but he's like, fuck you, I don't get paid enough for this. Come back tomorrow. Like,
That man cost her hundreds of dollars. Um, but apparently, I was reading that the Melissa Benoist apparently really vaulted that counter with zero hesitation.
listen, she's been Supergirl long enough. She's like, I could do this shit.
Oh yeah, no. Apparently, they're like, you're gonna have to like jump over that counter, and she's like, okay, got it. And the entire crew,
She's like,
yeah,
been there, done that.
yeah, and then she did it in like a second, and the entire crew was like, what the? But I do love that moment, and her just screaming at him to give her bills. And just like the almost like feralness of that fantasy is just so good.
I love the moment at the end when they're all coming into the room, and the silly influencer girl, I can never remember her name, but she is like, well, I just rented Thelma and Louise, and like, I just love that it's two women falling in love and going off to the sunset together, and the three older women are all just like, that is not what happens. Have you actually seen this movie? Like, what is wrong with you?
They died.
They die. It kind of reminded me of the episode of Friends where Phoebe admits that she's never seen certain movies, or like she's never seen the real versions of certain movies because her grandmother like protected her from death and dying as a child.
Mm-hmm.
And so like they watch Old Yeller and Bambi and she just starts sobbing. That's literally what I thought of.
uh, well, uh, let's move on to our next show, Star Trek Discovery, season 5, episode 5, entitled Mirrors. Uh, and part of the reason I'm talking about this is because this brings back a Star Trek TOS episode featuring the ISS Enterprise, where
Oh.
they come across the Mirror Universe Enterprise
Oh, that's cool.
and board it, where the seasoned antagonists Maul and Locke are fighting the next clue. And it's a fun like look back, both at like the TOS episode, but also because the first season dealt so heavily with mirror universe stuff. it is a kind of fun little nostalgic look back at that. So that's fun. It's cool being back on an Enterprise, especially for Michael and her brother being Spock.
Mm-hmm.
Like there's a moment where her and Booker are on the ship, and Booker is standing at Spock's science station, and she's like, "Oh, that's where my brother would stand." So it's a nice little episode. We get a lot more into Mullen Locke, which I'm not entirely certain that the episode fully earns. It gets more into like their backstory and their romance, and it's fine. We get a lot more about like the Breen, which is a Star Trek species that like we've never really gotten a whole lot on. Like they appeared at the end of Deep Space Nine, but they're kind of just like cool, you know, alien people in suits in these techno suits. So this was like a fun, greater look at that species as well. So I do enjoy this episode. One final thing. I posted this on. I said this on Twitter. There's a reference to Commander Rayner's, who's played by Callum Keith Rennie. His species boils cakes, and I just have questions. Why are you boiling cakes? How? In what way? I need answers. Forget the progenitors. I need the rest of the season to just focus on this one thing. Boiling cakes, how? In what way? What are you making the cakes out of?
Yeah.
Viscerally upset at this. But anyway, let's move on to our next show. X-Men 97, Episode 7, Bright Eyes. And this episode is rough. It's very good, but also rough. And I didn't really...
It's very hard to see Rogue in this way.
Yes. It's also difficult to see a lot of the characters in this way.
Yeah, I just am like viscerally remembering the Rogue parts of this episode.
Yeah.
Also, shout out to X-Men for bringing Captain America along.
Oh my god. And making him look like a dope.
I mean, that's the original Captain America appearance. Like, that's the way he used to look originally when they
not just physically, but like a dope. Like, like
I mean, he lets her steal his shield and throw it out the window.
That's true.
He's just like, oh, I'm Captain America. I can't possibly like deal with this mutant. I'm just gonna let her do whatever.
Yeah.
That's literally how he feels. Like, it just seems like he's just given up.
Yeah. And it's the interesting thing of the show directly address like acknowledging the Avengers.
Yep.
Because the X-Men always have like this really sticky place within like the Marvel universe, where like the Fantastic Four are going off on like fun adventures, and meanwhile the X-Men are like fighting genocide, and like oppression and racial discrimination, basically. And it's always really hard to like square that while like Spider-Man's off fighting the Green Goblin, and you're like, these are supposed to be the same universe. And the only way that really works is if you just accept the fact that the Avengers know what's happening and don't care or don't do anything.
Mm-hmm.
And this as like a direct kind of criticism on that of like you could do things if you really wanted to. You choose not to.
Mm-hmm.
You know, Cap could do things. He just makes the choice not to.
Yep.
So I think that's really interesting. And that kind of uh, indifference playing out in like a lot of other areas of the show, you know, or a lot of other non-mutant parts of the show, you know.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it's really good and astute, like the conversation that Cyclops has with the president, which feels very
Yeah.
of this time.
Yeah, it really does.
Um,
Um, it's interesting. I get Cyclops' perspective. I also sort of get the president as well. Like, he's like, listen, I'm on your side, and I know you want me to do more, but like, if I do more right now, I could lose, and someone worse could come in and destroy all of you. So like, I get that, but I hate it, but I still get it.
yeah, yeah. So like it's the same dichotomy that we have right now of you could have me who might not do anything, or you'll have somebody else who will definitely do something that you won't
Yep.
like.
Yeah.
And how do you square that?
Yeah. I I also really liked the conversation that Hank has with the reporter. Like, they walk around and they talk about what's happened, and Hank talks about Professor, and it's just it's again, it's a reminder that the professor is alive. He's just not here.
Mm-hmm.
He's not helping. Um and it's that idea that the professor, while as much as we love Professor Xavier, he does have a very idealistic look at the world and how mutants interact in the world. um and Hank kind of calls him out on that. He's like, it was nice to think of this, but that kind of also just makes us bigger targets because they know exactly where to find us.
Mm-hmm.
um and I found that interesting that the show even brings that up.
Right. Well, and it's hard to be at this place in the show and not be like, well, Magneto was right.
Yep.
Just full on, Magneto was right.
And he was very correct.
Yes, very correct. Speaking of Magneto, I do love that Rogue had to be reminded that Magneto, like, they think Magneto is dead.
Mm-hmm.
And, like, she had to be reminded of that fact because she's only grieving Gambit.
Yep.
And the show's kind of playing its hand a little bit of, like,
Mm-hmm.
Magneto's not really dead. We all know Magneto's not dead, but the lack of attention that the show is making to like the possibility that he could be dead. It's like, all right, you could at least try.
Mm-hmm.
You could at least pretend.
Right, you could make it a little less obvious.
At least try to pretend like we don't all know that Magneto's alive. Yeah. And I like the end with the inclusion of the new villain, Bastion,
Mm-hmm.
which It's good because, like, in X-Men, there's only ever, like, 3 villains. It's either
Yep.
Magneto, Mr. Sinister, or Apocalypse. Um,
Right.
like, there was a moment where I was like, hang on, is this guy just like another Herald of Apocalypse? Are we just doing Apocalypse again? um,
Hmm. Yep.
but no, Bastion is something much weirder, and I can't wait for them to try to explain Bastion. Uh, yeah, I don't even know. I do like that Mr. Sinister is basically a lackey here, though. Just like a glorified henchman, pretty much,
Yep.
which is exactly what he deserves. Oh,
Yeah.
so that's funny. Um,
There was some, I want to say there was some talk that people like, if you look, if you look through the episodes we've had so far, like the clues were there that this guy was coming along,
mhm,
that this villain was coming along.
yeah,
I have not read those articles, but I've seen a couple of them and I was like, interesting. I will look at that later.
yeah, yeah. So let's continue to Star Wars: The Bad Batch, season 3, episode
Yes.
14, Flash Strike. Um, and this just felt like another episode of The Bad Batch spinning its wheels.
Which is sad because we only have like one episode left.
Yeah. So it's like stalling until we can get to like the big place that the show wants to end
Yep.
on. So it's not bad. It's just kind of what it is.
Right.
Um, so I didn't mind it
Yeah,
too
I felt
much.
like not a lot happened. I felt like not a lot happened, and I was like, okay, that was a waste of my time.
Yeah, it's a lot of them trudging through the forest and Echo trying not to be noticed, and um, Omega trying to do Omega stuff. And it's things that I feel like we've already done for episodes now,
Right.
and this is just more of that. Like it's fine.
It's just for a show that's coming to an end and having very limited time left. Like I feel like this season has been very unnecessarily repetitive.
Yeah, it's very scattershot. Um, just like doing a thing and going back to doing a thing, then doing a thing again, and
Yeah, I'm just like, okay. Can we do something more exciting considering the show is in its final moments? I had hoped that it would be something a bit more, celebratory of what the series is,
mm-hmm.
but nope.
Yeah, I think a lot of this just feels like it could have been more streamlined.
Hmm.
Um, and it's I don't know, like it feels like they've dragged it out a lot.
Yeah.
So again, not necessarily bad or good. It's just where we're at in the show. Yeah. Well, more on this next week as we talk about the end of the show.
Yeah, I feel like we didn't need to spend a lot of time on this cuz like we said, not a whole lot happens that we haven't discussed before.
Yeah. So let's close out the show with Ghost, season 3, episode 9, The Traveling Agent. So
Let me just say, while I'm annoyed that we're playing fast and loose with ghost rules, I did find it very entertaining watching Jay try to act like he could see Pete throughout the whole episode.
they're gonna have to let Jay see the ghost one day. Like, right? Like,
I need it to happen. I need it to happen.
there's almost only so many places you can derive comedy from out of this joke.
The whole keys and trying to get him to follow. It's just like, we're not pets, Jay. And the and the ghosts are all just like, when he comes back from the store without Pete, the ghosts are all just like, oh dear, who's going to tell him that he's not in the car? Like, in what universe did Samantha think this was a good
Yeah,
idea
this is awful.
to send her man off with a ghost he can't see?
Unbelievable.
I was just like, there's a problem with that plot line.
Yeah. We do have to talk about, as you said, how incredibly fast and loose they are now playing with ghost rules.
Yeah.
You can
Yeah.
so Ghost has now said you can set up a rule unless a ghost power can trump
It is
that
their special ability. Yeah.
that rule.
Yep.
That's where we're at now.
Yep.
That feels extremely dangerous.
It does, and it also just feels like, for a show that's very strict about the parameters of what it can be and how very much at the on the property that this show has taken place. Like, occasionally we see Jay sorry, we see Jay and Sam go off and do different things. But generally the story takes place on the property.
Yeah.
And now we're saying, "Oh, Pete can go off to St. Bart's." No problem.
No problem.
And it's like, I have a problem with that.
Yeah. I don't. Structurally, this feels like a extremely slippery slope.
It's like it's as if the writers were like, okay, there's only so much that we can do within the parameters we've established. So therefore, we're going to change those parameters to create another plot point. But to be fair, you could have done some of this plot point um without changing those parameters. Like, it would have been funny if it would have been hilarious if Sam had said, "Oh, Pete has learned he can, leave the property, but it's not a true statement," and makes Jay believe that he has gone off to the store with a ghost he can't see. Like, that would be hilarious.
Yeah.
It doesn't need to actually have Pete leaving the property. But I worry that with them only having one more season, that in the next season they're going to be like, "Oh, well, now Isaac's going to find out that his superpower isn't the farting thing, it's actually something else that's a lot more extensive." And you're just like, "No, ghosts can only do so much. They are dead."
They are dead. Yeah. And even within like the parameters of this episode as like an episode, they abandoned the grocery store bit too early.
They did.
They should have spent more time in the grocery store, because like that to me feels like the whole bit of like not Pete wandering about the world, which like he could do, but
at the beginning of the episode, he was terrified to even leave the property. Like all of a sudden, he's so totally fine to go to St. Bart's. Like I, especially with how terrifying the experience at the grocery store was, you would think that he would immediately be like, "Nope, never leaving the property again."
no, yeah.
But instead, he goes. Which the other thing, I get the sentimentality of him going off to St. Bart's, to see his daughter and grandchild. But the problem with that is that like, what true joy can he get out of that? They can't see him. He can't talk to them.
Mm-hmm.
So what is the point of him going all that way?
Right.
I don't know, maybe I'm just like super cynical about it. But like I I just don't feel like it was a worthy thing to introduce to the plot.
Right. Well, and like, what if Pete has like a grand moment and gets sucked off while he's somewhere else?
Right.
What guarantee do they have
How are
that
they
that
going to
won't
find
happen,
out?
and they'll never know?
Right. How are they going to find out? Because it's not like Sam can find out where he was in St. Bart's without full communication with Pete himself. And if Pete has been sucked off, like they don't know.
They don't know. Yeah. So it's like
Yeah.
that feels.
And Pete is one of the more beloved characters on the show. I'm not saying that people don't love all of them, but like a lot of fans really like Pete.
Mm-hmm.
So like it I don't understand why they had him go off. Like, is he gonna be back like next week, like as if nothing ever happened? Like,
Yeah.
I just, I just, there are many issues that were brought up by them introducing this plot.
It's deeply worrisome. Yeah.
And then there's the side story of Thor having sex with pretty much everyone but Flower.
Yeah.
Because he thought Flower was dead. Which, again, why is everyone having sex with Nancy? Like, ew.
Yeah. I do love.
I do love that actress. She's one of my favorite actresses, but I'm just like, ew.
I do love that they Poochie died on the way back to his home planet to Carol. They're just like, she's gone. We got too many ghosts here now.
They're like, she's in the basement. No, actually, she's in the barn. And we're just like, okay, cool.
Cool, she's not here anymore.
Go have sex with whoever.
Again, kind of seems like you could have not killed that character, but
right.
Who am I to judge? But I love the conclusion this episode comes to, and it is the conclusion that more shows should arrive at, which is thruples. Thruples should more often be the answer.
Yeah, I like Thor. He's like, so you and me, couple off the table, but thruple, and she goes, thruple.
Yeah,
and I'm like, get it, Flower, get
like,
it.
Of course that's the answer Flower would come to.
Mm-hmm.
Like, of course.
Well, because she, of all the characters, is the most sexually fluid, the most open to anything, and she's lit from a time period that was very much, we don't tie ourselves down to one person. Let's just have fun. And that's exactly what she's doing. She's like, okay, Thor, I don't know if I can trust you to just be the only person that, me to be the only person you're with. So why don't we just everybody get together?
Yeah. Very astute. I don't like that the end of the episode's like, oh, this is doomed, because polyamorous relationships work all the time in real life.
Yep.
And should be portrayed as such. But
Yep.
um, yeah, that being said, I don't have high hopes that the show will commit
Do a
to a
good job.
polyamorous relationship because television in general does not.
Nope.
But we will see.
Yeah, because one of my friends is actually married to her husband, and also like not married but commitment ceremonied to her girlfriend. And so it's like, I love that for you guys. You guys are in a relationship together, you live together, the three of you are happy and thriving, and I love that. I wish television would show that kind of stuff.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. The weird binary that television has of like it can only you when in love triangle you can either only have person A or person B, and it's like that is so boring. Please have a greater
Yes.
imagination.
I feel like the only time it's really been that I've seen like quote unquote open relationships or like thruples or things like that have been on shows from the early 2000s that were on paid TV programming. Like the L Word and Queer as Folk, like
Right.
they had a lot of that stuff going on. But like you get stuff nowadays, it's just like they're like, no, we can't do that. That scares people. I'm like, no, it doesn't. We thrived on that in the early 2000s.
Let's not forget that Riverdale ended with all of them in a
Oh yeah,
polyamorous
it
relationship.
did. You are correct, it did. But I feel like that can't be considered a win because it was in the final moments of the final episode.
Listen, I'll
Um
take a win where I get it.
that's I mean that's true. That's true. But next week is the season finale for Ghosts, and it is Isaac and Nigel's wedding.
Nice.
Which I'm sure they'll find some kind of shenanigans to happen, but we'll see. It can't just be a simple
No,
wedding. Come on.
it's never a simple
This is
wedding.
a sitcom.
Never a simple wedding.
Never a simple wedding.
uh, well, that is it for this week. Next week, we'll be talking about the Dead Boy Detectives on Netflix. Uh, until then, Matt, where can we follow you online?
You can follow me on Twitter and Instagram at DorothyNYC89. You can also find me on Tumblr at MadsWorld15. And yeah, that's primarily where I'm at these days.
Nice. And you can follow me on Twitter at the Draconig, on Blue Sky at Draconig, and also on Letterboxd and Serialized. Um, you can follow the podcast on Twitter, Blue Sky, Instagram, YouTube, and TikTok at None Other TV Podcast. And be sure to email us at notanothertvpodcast at gmail.com with any thoughts, comments, questions, uh, show recommendations, goat submissions that you have. Be sure to keep an eye out for our bracket that will be going on. And be sure to share that on whatever social platform you're using. Be sure to check out our previous episodes on Apple Podcasts and YouTube, along with our Libsyn feed, libsyn.com/notanothertvpodcast. Um, be sure to leave us a review and subscribe on whatever podcasting device you're currently using. Uh, until next week, Please remember, don't go in the ocean. None of your business. If you see a squid, just walk the other way. Goodbye.
Ugh.
All right. So, next week. I think we're all good.
Still recording.
Still recording. Should still be recording. The rest of the next week of my life goes very upside down, which I'm hoping it doesn't. We should be good.
Yep.
All right. So, yeah, next week. We'll see you.
Sounds good.
All right.